Standing up in McKinney, this is According to Callus. Episode 685, coming to you on the 30th of August, the year of our Lord, 2024. And today I need to do something a little different. I'm going to entitle this, My Friend Chad. Now, I think it'll be explained during the course of the episode, but I want to be clear. My friend doesn't know I'm doing this, didn't ask me to do this, and quite frankly is probably going to be a little embarrassed, but that's okay. And so we're clear, this same friend is the one I've interviewed a time or two and serves on the McKinney ISD school board. And I think he is worthy of a defense. I think his actions require a defense. Now, you may not come to the same conclusion as I do. You may come in predisposed to hate on the man, and you're free to do that because we still have a nominally free country. But I'm equally free to state what I believe to be the case and what I believe is the truth, and I leave the chips fall where they may. Before we get into that, before I take the time to do that, let me remind you the best way you can help me make a difference, have our voice heard, grow the show, is to like, share, and subscribe to this here podcast. Join me on the social media of your choice. I have a page and a group over at Facebook. I'm a pro at Gab, and I still drop in at MeWe. Oh, yes. And you can still find most of my programs over at YouTube. With that, let's go on with the show. And let me say for the onset, allergies are kind of wreaking havoc on me today. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so I want to paint you a picture, if I will, or if I may. A little over, I would say, 10 years ago, I met Mr. Green. I was working at a local Dodge dealership, and he had a Jeep Liberty, a diesel one, no less. Those are rare. They're still probably even much more rare now since they've been discontinued. But every customer that I ever dealt with, I did my best to make sure that they were treated fairly, that they were informed, and they understood what was going on with their vehicle, even if they weren't gearheads or even if they just didn't care, that I would take the time out to explain it to the extent that they felt comfortable. And I also made it a policy I never would sell somebody on something that they didn't want. I just didn't believe in the forced sale, if you will. Big fan of the soft sell. So I met Mr. Green at my line of work, not knowing the significance of that. Fast forward to 2019. Actually, yeah, I guess it would be 2019. I'm out and about that summer, or well, I guess it was maybe might have been the summer 2018, now that I recollect a little better. I ran across Mr. Green at the Independence Day Parade in downtown McKinney. I think I've got that correct. And then 2019, while I was doing my attempt to offer an alternative for a city council seat that would have went unopposed, it was an open seat that it would have been unopposed. I threw my hat in the ring. I have a real problem with open seats only having one choice. I made peace with the fact early on that I probably wouldn't win, but I'd hoped with a three-way race, we'd have a different outcome. But while I was out block walking and doing the campaigning things, I ran across Mr. Green, and he was making his first attempt at running for school board. So we did some block walking together. We did some, different campaign events together, and he remembered me from my former line of work. And I was kind of flattered or impressed that somebody would remember me. from that, but I remembered him as well, mostly because of the Jeep. But in fairness, I mean, he was always a nice guy and always wanted to hear what I had to say or what I was telling him about his vehicle. So we were out campaigning. We did our best, and I think in 2019 we both came up short. But then again, in 2021, Mr. Green threw his hat in the ring again for the McKinney School Board. Now, I've known Chad at this point now for, 3 or 4 years. We've talked, we interact, and he has a distinct passion for the public school system. Now, I often refer to it as government school system. I wholeheartedly agree that it's a government school system, but I think it's fair to say we were both self-identified as Christian conservatives, right? His feeling, I would still say I'm probably leaning more libertarian than conservative, but we're both liberty conservatives, right? And we put our Christianity first in our thought process. Obviously, I know this sends red flags with certain people. Neither one of us are trying to shove our faith on you, so just chill out. All right, so that being said, 2021 is here. He's running. He's campaigning. I did what I could to help him. He was successful this time. He gets elected to the school board for McKinney ISD. And no sooner is he elected, and, he's off the script. And he got elected with another guy who was also off the script. That one, I guess, got with the game plan right away. I guess would be the easiest way to put it. He made peace with the powers that be and gave up any semblance of reform or new ideas or fresh thoughts. He immediately caved. Now, I don't know what his motivation was. I don't know what they had on him, if anything. I don't know how they pressured him. But at the end of the day, he didn't do pretty much anything that he said he wanted to do, other than make some comments about various, let's say issues that are near and dear to him. But nothing actually happened or changed, courtesy of this gentleman. Chad, on the other hand, was a steadfast proponent of several things. And apparently that upset the apple cart. And in fairness, I don't think he was successful in getting anything done either. When you take nearly every vote in the school board and it's 6-1 and you lose, that weighs on you. There's personal attacks, there's private attacks, there's nobody willing to second any of your motions, nobody willing to support any questions. It's just a complete silence. So now I'm going to transition from the man I know, right? This guy that has sacrificed a lot to serve the school district, a lot of his job, his lifestyle, everything was set aside so we could do this and do it with relish. And one of the things that always impressed me is very soft-spoken. I mean, not to say that he doesn't get riled up, but by and large, very soft-spoken, very even-keeled. His passion comes out in his conversation. If you were going to criticize, you might say he can be a little quick on the draw on some of the social media posts. We're all guilty of that from time to time. And, much like myself, sometimes grammar gets the best of you. That grammar. But, in fairness, right? We want to be objective here. Chad is my friend. I support him. I think he's done a great job. I think he's fought the good fight the entire time. And almost always is still positive. Almost always still has a smile on his face. But man, you go through that for 3+ years, it wears on you. It beats you down. To get censured twice for ridiculous reasons. To have lawsuits put against you, accusations, to have city council members, including the mayor himself, chiming in and making false and blanket accusations about you and your character. It wears on somebody. So the job he took as a member of the school board was not just that job. It was everything. It became all-encompassing because you could never escape it. And what I found is he's the sole voice on the school board that asks any questions. He's the only one that doesn't just accept the status quo. He's the only one that verbalizes, hey, there's maybe an issue here, or maybe there's a problem here. And to be fair, I think he's gotten some bad advice, that he's gotten some less than truthful intel. And honestly, I can't say that I wasn't duped by the same person at one point in time, right? When somebody tells you something, somebody you have a relationship with and that you trust, and they give you information, or they tell you something is true, or they provide you a modicum of evidence, and then you take action on it, and they don't follow through, they don't back it up, and quite frankly, they let you twist in the breeze, well, you learn rather quickly that this is politics, and you just got shafted by somebody you trusted, somebody you liked, somebody you worked with. So what are you going to do? Well, you have to accept the fact that, well, this may have been a true statement, or I believed it to be true, but I don't have the evidence to back it up. It doesn't mean it isn't true. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just can't prove it out. And you got to own that. And to his credit, I believe he's done that. So it's a certain amount of irony that I look at what's going on now, right? So he's going to run for re-election. I mean, tougher man than I am with all the abuse been heaped on him in the last 4 years. And to be honest, it's not like the school district and their folks aren't trying to make his life miserable. I mean, they doxed his family. They've gone after different jobs that he's had. I mean, who does this? I mean, this isn't normal political action here. This is behavior beyond the pale. And they all have plausible deniability, mind you, right? And we saw the retirement of a long-term superintendent. For better or for worse, he did a lot of good things in the city of McKinney. For McKinney ISD, he retired. And one of the things that his CFO had said, look, we need to cut a number of jobs from the administrative staff because, you know, we're going to have a budget shortfall here, and we need to address it. Curiously enough, the replacement superintendent, whom, in my personal opinion, probably not truly qualified to have the job based upon what I know of the situation. And admittedly, I don't have every last detail. So, I mean, I don't claim to be an expert on what it takes to run a school district. But I do find it interesting that we had to hire 2 more assistant or associate or whatever the correct title is, superintendents. So the previous guy could do the job by himself for less money. The new guy not only needs more money, but 2 more assistants when we have less students now than when the previous superintendent was here. How does that work? Now, God forbid that Mr. Green, Chad, would ask questions. Well, why is this? Why are we spending $1.2 million on more personnel when we really don't have the money? Asking, well, what are we going to do about a shortfall? Well, we're not allowed to talk about that. Brought up the idea that, well, you know, we have schools that aren't nearly filled to capacity. Have we considered maybe shutting one of the schools down, whether it's temporary or permanent? We can reassign the staff. We don't have to give up our teachers. We can still take good care of all of our students, but we just have a building here which is costing us more money than we can justify. No, can't have that. Can't discuss that. There are so many things that we as constituents aren't aware of because the school district refuses to be transparent, refuses to talk about these things. Now, maybe there's a few key people that know things and they know enough things and they can do the sleight of hand and shuffle of money and justify what it is they're doing. But I'm not confident that's getting us what I want, what we deserve, what we want. McKinney ISD apparently just feels like they have carte blanche because, you know, they get a 6-1 vote on anything and everything they want. I mean, when's the last time that anybody on that board said no or questioned something? I mean, where did they find 6 stooges that would just do whatever they're told? You know, this whole team of 8 business, well, it sounds good. I mean, most city councils run the same way, right? We're in lockstep with whatever the mayor wants. Or maybe it's just me and that's my observation. I could be wrong there. I'm not so sure that quote-unquote unified government is what's best for those of us that are the constituents, what's best for us that are the taxpayers. Now, I realize taxes are going to go up. whether it's from inflation, whether it's from additional expenses, whether it is from the fact that interest rates are higher. There's any number of reasons why they're going to have to take more of our money. But my question is, if I have to tighten my belt buckle and you all have to tighten your belt buckles, how is that we can justify paying these folks more money and taking more money away from us when they won't look at cutting or reducing anything? It's off the table. We can't talk about that. Now, look, I know there was a series of events that have happened in the last couple of years that are controversial, that are problematic. And perhaps you could make an argument that Chad got it wrong. Again, I believe he was given information by somebody that he trusted that misled him. And being that I'm at least somewhat in the same boat there, I can see how that would happen. It's not good. It's a terrible outcome. But when you own it, when you're honest about it, you got to be careful. You don't want to necessarily throw the person under the bus because they could have been duped too, right? But the mere fact that you wouldn't have a discussion, you wouldn't look into it, you weren't in the slightest bit concerned about any of it, it's troublesome. The idea that Mr. Green literally sits around and makes things up just so he can, quote unquote, get his brand out there. Be bellicose. Yeah, that's also called projection. And the elected official that's putting all that on Mr. Green is guilty of the very same stuff that he's trying to put on Mr. Green. That is classic projection. And we've seen plenty of it from this same said individual. And to have one of his lackeys, who apparently is a Republican, I don't have any reason to doubt him, fall in line and parrot the exact same stuff. It's just disappointing. Now, you can feel fine, or I'm sorry, let me back up. I am fine with you feeling that Mr. Green is not a good representative. I am fine with the idea that you don't like his politics. But what I'm not good with is when you're going to besmirch his character, when you're going to call him names, when you're going to assume the worst out of him without even talking to the guy, without even giving him the benefit of the doubt, without even taking 5 minutes to pick up the phone and say, hey, Chad, I saw what you said or what your question was here. Why are you asking that? No. Just go ahead and run your mouth. Disparage. Now, look, I avoid picking fights. I avoid confrontation with other elected officials because I know a lot of what you see and a lot of what you hear isn't accurate or isn't fair. So you don't necessarily want to go steer into that. But on the flip side, you can't continue to ignore these things. When Mr. Green is in an all-out assault, that's maybe a bad term. It's one that's, let's just say when he's verbally attacked often by an elected official that's not on the school board and then the entirety of the school board, because, how dare you question anything, it's a little surprising that the man still is able to go put his boots on in the morning and go to work and show up at the school board meetings and generally have a smile on his face. But there he is. They paint him as a monster when I would say he cares as much, if not more, for all those students in the ISD than any of the other elected officials. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say we have 3 members of the school board right now that are Biden-esque. And what do I mean by that? I'm not sure that they know what day it is at any given time. They have difficulty putting together coherent sentences. Just my observation. Maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe I saw him on a bad day. But I've got a lot of things going on in my life, and I can't sit around and watch every school board meeting every month for the city of McKinney, or for McKinney ISD. And I get a lot of things secondhand, but I do talk to Mr. Green. Hey, is this true? Is this happening? Did you see this? And most of the time, he's very deferential. Well, yeah, maybe it could be seen that way, or yeah, that wasn't maybe the best. The guy doesn't run around bad-mouthing his coworkers on the school board. He just doesn't. Now, he and I have private conversations where he'll honestly evaluate certain things. But everything I've ever seen is we've got 6 members of the school board that absolutely hate the fact that somebody's there that asks questions, that doesn't follow the party line, that doesn't toe the company line, that is out of sync with them. So my question is, what's the point of electing people to represent us if they're not allowed to actually represent us? If they're just supposed to go there and do what they're told and not question anything, what's the point of electing anybody? So now, to that end, this latest thing that's come up. So I'm told, and I have no reason to doubt this, by the way, but I'm told that in fact, McKinney ISD does not have boys using the girls' locker room. That they're not dealing with the fact that boys are using the girls' bathrooms. What I've read online is they in fact have a policy that is deferential to the interpretation of Title IX as put forth by the Biden administration, which apparently now has been shut down by the SCOTUS. And apparently, again, these are all things that are available. You can go look them up online. People send me this stuff, right? There is a state law that says you must do this, this, and this related to this specific issue, right? But here's the thing. We have cities all over this state, all over many other states, that just do what they want, and it's up to the state to come in and enforce it. And most of the time, the state doesn't bother. They just say, well, you know, that's that city. We don't care if they're going to do that. They can be scofflaws. But what I'm concerned about is the fact that we have a policy that is on the website that seems to indicate that McKinney ISD would rather follow the interpretation of Title IX put forth by the Biden administration than the Texas state law. And then to have people say, well, Texas state law trumps that. Well, sure it does, but somebody has to actually take a complaint and do something with it. They have to spend time and money to get put before the court where they can come in and say, no, you can't do that anymore. But we all know that really doesn't happen because, quite frankly, a lot of parents aren't willing to risk their children's peace of mind at school. They put up with a lot of stuff because they're trying to, quote unquote, protect their children. But you're not doing yourself or your children any favors if you're not going to stand up for them, if you're not going to stand up for the right thing, if you're going to just continue to be cuckolded by the school district. I mean, it seems to me the vast majority of men are very pusillanimous. They don't want to stand up for their own children. They don't want to protect their wives or their daughters. So they just stand there and take it. They accept that's just the way it is now. Well, we just have to make peace. No, this is wrong. We know this is wrong. And the mere fact that Chad Green brings it up in a meeting, and we'll get to that in just a minute, and nobody's interested in actually saying, well, you know what, maybe that's a policy which should say, well, we already have a state law that reflects this, but we would like our policy within the ISD to align with that rather than this bad interpretation from the Biden Title IX department. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a crisis because, like I said, to my knowledge, there is no specific events that are occurring currently that are this problem. And I saw multiple posts related to the fact, well, we should really deal with the problems. We should really deal with the other issues that the district has. I agree wholeheartedly. We should be dealing with the problems and the issues that the district has, but we're not allowed to do that either. They haven't addressed the budget shortfall. They haven't addressed the fact that we have at least one extra school open that doesn't need to be open right now. We don't have the bodies to justify it. And when you question where those students went, it's they're homeschooled or they're private schooled or they left the district. And you got to ask yourself, well, why would they do that? Maybe we're not offering the quality of product that we previously were. I mean, look, I have an entirely different thought on the school districts being run by government or schools in general being run by government than Mr. Green does. He and I don't agree on this issue. We agree to disagree. Mr. Green has always put back on me, yes, Stephen, I understand where you're coming from. You're wrong, but I understand it. But you need to understand there always are going to be government schools, or in his words, public schools. And it's our job to make sure that they do as good a job as possible to raise up children to become young adults that would be good functioning citizens. Well, it's really hard to argue that other than the philosophy that government shouldn't be running schools. I mean, we're on two different wavelengths there. And I've always told him, well, in that way, I'm going to defer to your expertise. I'm going to defer to your preference here. I think you've got a very good point. I would be happy if the school district shut down tomorrow, but I know that's not going to happen. And you are correct. We're going to have these government schools for the foreseeable future. So we need to make sure they are as good as possible, that they do the job that all the parents think they ought to do. And I'm really certain that 99% of the, well, that's a little high. How about 85% of the parents out there really want little Mary to not have to worry about little Johnny coming into her bathroom or her locker room, or God forbid, wrestle against them or whatever in some kind of sport thing. Yeah, and I know UIL has some documentation on what they would prefer on that. But when they use the word may, it's not really encouraging. Shall is the appropriate legal word, but may means, well, you can do it if you want to, but you don't really have to. So for those of you that think UIL will solve this problem, you're mistaken. So how do we move forward on this? Okay. So there are those out there that think that, Robert's rules, in order to be properly followed, would have said that if it is not on the agenda, specifically outlined on the agenda, it can't be brought up. Okay. We'll give you that interpretation for the moment. So if that item is not on the agenda, rather than asking for a second, the chairman or the president of the school board should have said, I'm sorry, Mr. Green, that item is not on the agenda. That is out of order. Would you consider allowing me to put it on the agenda for the next meeting? Or are you requesting that we address this item on the agenda next meeting? But we all know that's never going to happen because nothing Mr. Green ever wants on the agenda is going to ever see the light of day. If you doubt me, look at the agenda. Who do you think comes up with that agenda? It certainly isn't Mr. Green. I'm 99% sure there's no calls to Chad. Hey, next month at the school board meeting, did you have any concerns that you wanted to have addressed? No, that never happens. So when you're stuck in a position where you're never going to have your concerns addressed, you have to sometimes utilize the protocol to the best of your ability. So, option number 2. The idea that you put a very blanket item on the agenda, i.e., excuse me here, school district policy. If you put the word policy, that's all encompassing. So theoretically, any policy would be appropriate underneath that. Now, that's a very expansive view on it, but under Robert's rules, I'm not sure you can make an argument. And while we're on it, they said it was illegal. Well, no, bringing up an issue is not illegal if it's properly handled, which would have been the job of the chairman, or in this case, the president of the ISD, to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Green, rather than taking a second on that, we need to reschedule that for when we can add that item to the agenda. But he didn't do that. So that means either one, he knew this was an open loophole because they had policy on the agenda. So technically it could be brought up. So he had to defeat it by getting everybody to not second it. Surprise, surprise, Mr. Green not getting a motion seconded. Can we never see that before? No, we've never seen that before. Come on. Or there's the third option. That is, they knew full well that it was in order and they left it out there trying to embarrass Chad Green for bringing up this issue by having nobody second it. But unfortunately for them, somebody was there to record it and put it up on the social media. And now they look like the butts that they are. They refused to even discuss it. They refused to have any agreement that perhaps there's a way we could review this policy to bring in proper alignment with the state law. Now, they say they don't have to, but they could have said that as well, right? Hey, I'm going to second that motion. Let's have a discussion. They could have, like adults, said, well, Mr. Green, I understand what you're concerned about here, but the McKinney ISD policy currently is aligned with what we believe is the Title IX. We could adapt it to follow what the Texas state law is, or they could simply, since the Texas state law trumps anything we do as a policy, we don't feel it's necessary. Or they could have said, you know what, in light of the recent decision from SCOTUS, we're going to say we need to review that policy. We're not saying we have a problem here. In fact, we're vehemently denying that we have this problem. But in light of your question, we could update the policy. They could have done any of those things, but rather than do that, nope, we're just going to let it die. And then when the heat got turned on, well, they had to call their old friend up, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Mr. Mayor, this is Mr. Pratt. And of course, I'm speculating here. I don't know this to be true. It could have been Mr. Hassler. I don't know. It could be true. Maybe not. Who knows? Somebody from the school district said, Mr. Mayor, we've made a mess. Could you please help us out? Could you basically accuse Mr. Green of doing all the very... Oh, I'm sorry. That's me editorializing. We need some help pushing back on Mr. Green. He's made us look foolish. Well, of course, Mr. Mayor can't help himself. He likes being the center of attention. And to be fair, he's earned that right as the mayor. But he's inserting himself in the school district when he's the mayor of the city. And then to get basic facts wrong while making an argument, whether or not the argument has merit is irrelevant. If you can't get your basic facts right, that's kind of a problem. So the question is, if Mr. Green was out of order, like is being stipulated, i.e. he's violated the law, I don't know that I agree with that interpretation, but let's just give it. Then we'll say Mr. Green screwed up. He shouldn't have brought it up. But then let's now say the president of the school board, Mr. Hassler, screwed up even more because rather than doing the right thing, i.e. saying, I'm sorry, you're out of order, we can't discuss that, or I'm sorry, Mr. Green, I believe that's out of order, we could add that to the agenda for next month. No, he asked for a second with the express purpose of trying to embarrass Mr. Green, in my opinion. But when that didn't work and it backfired, well, either himself or perhaps some other agent of the school district went crying to the popular mayor. Help make us look less stupid. Again, in my opinion, right? And for those of you following along, this entire show is called According to Callus because it's based strictly on my opinion and my understanding of events. And you know what? Occasionally I get things wrong. So if I do get it wrong, feel free to call me out and send me the correct information. But I think I stand on pretty firm ground here. Because if he was really, truly out of order, yes, he might have screwed up, but so did the president. In fact, you could say the onus was on the president because he's the one that's leading the meeting, and he should have been in possession of a better grasp of the rules that dictate the meeting. But clearly he doesn't have that down. But what I really, truly think is they screwed up when they wrote the agenda and they put policy, school policy or school district policy, and they didn't narrow it down enough. And they didn't catch it soon enough to do anything about it. So that when Mr. Green brought that up, it bit him. That's what I think happened. Now, I'm not going to visit the issue whether or not there's a problem in the school district or not. I don't know. I'm quite confident if there was, we would hear about it. But then again, the school district's very good on hiding things and running for cover. Just saying. I mean, there's a history of this, right? And it's not just McKinney ISD. It's a lot of school districts. They're very good at hiding things. So setting all that aside, let's just say there's zero problems in McKinney ISD. I still think this is good policy. I still think it's valuable to bring it up. And had it been handled properly, which is to say, according to their interpretation, Mr. Green, that's out of order. We need to bring this up next month. And Mr. Green could have said, well, I'd like it on the agenda for next month. Which they probably would have shot that down too. Let's be honest. Mr. Green can't get anything put on the agenda because the other six are afraid of something. Probably their shadow. Or my interpretation of the events is correct. And he wasn't violating the rules. And because of how broad the term policy is, he was well within his rights to ask for that policy to be revised or brought up for discussion. And they just outed themselves as not caring. The larger issue here is Mr. Green almost every month is attacked, ridiculed, abused by the people he serves with, and quite frankly, some of the people that are in the school district or have ties to the school district. Now, as an elected official, that kind of comes with the deal, right? You're going to get abused by your constituents. I mean, if you doubt me, look at Jeff Leach or look at my mayor. They get abused by people all the time. It's not necessarily right or fair, but it comes with the deal. So as far as that goes, Mr. Green's a big guy. He can handle it. The people that you're serving with, I'm really not sure what the hatred is. And the three Biden-esque people, I'm not even sure they remember why they're upset with Chad. Okay, so let's take a moment now. So, regardless of whether or not you think there's a problem here, there still is a policy that could and should be revised. Unless they've already done it. It's possible. I don't know. I don't run the school district. The school board could choose to work as a functioning operation, whereupon they treat Mr. Green as the equal that he is and just promptly defeat him in every vote. Or they can continue on with the petty behavior that they've been doing. I'm not saying Mr. Green's perfect. I'm not saying that Chad hasn't, done something wrong or made a mistake or misunderstood something, because I don't know. All I'm saying is they could give him a modicum of grace that they seem to be willing to give to a superintendent that had to hire two other people to do the job that he should have been able to do in the first place. They could use the same modicum of grace for the budgetary people that keep telling them, hey, we're going to be $61 million short or whatever the actual number is, and we don't have a good solution for it. They could have, the same modicum of grace that they have for all the other sketchy things that have gone on in the past that they just were hush-hush about. We don't want to talk about that. No. But Chad Green is enemy number one. He is the only one that needs to be dealt with. We're not going to tolerate anything that would allow us to hear another side. And I ask you, is that the school district that we want? I mean, I have always been supportive of people that I don't necessarily agree with being heard. I've always been supportive of people that have a different angle or a different idea being heard. Vote them down. If they're wrong, vote them down. Or if you've got a better idea, stand up for it. But that's not tolerated. Not in 2024 America. Hell no. Can't have that. Oh, I'm sorry. Can't have that. Heck no. It's just the world that we live in now. You're not allowed to dissent. You're not allowed to step out of line. And if you do, you're that nail that's sticking up and you need to be hammered down. The Asian proverb, in case you've forgotten. So in my defense of Mr. Green, right, my friend Chad, I'm just asking, when we go into this next election cycle, would you prefer to have Mr. Green there to represent for another term? Would you prefer to have somebody else that maybe doesn't agree with Chad on everything, maybe doesn't agree with a lot of things, but at least is willing to buck the system, at least is willing to second issues so that you can have them discussed in public for the people to hear? Now, I got to tell you, going back 4 years when Mr. Jaggers was elected, I honestly believed we had another reformed mind individual. Now, he was going to agree with Chad on these are issues, but they were going to probably vehemently disagree on what the proper solution was. That was okay, because you'd at least get a discussion, because you'd have somebody make a motion and somebody second it. But it didn't take very long before they squashed him down. They formed him into, a Stepford council member. Oh, I'm sorry, board member. Stepford board member. Giant disappointment, in my opinion. And as for the other two people that have, one that's been there forever and the other one that was in the school district forever, I mean, I'm sure they're both nice, wonderful people. I'm just not sure what they're contributing at this point. I mean, seriously. You can love Joe Biden's policies. You can love Joe Biden as a person, but it's very clear for the last 3.5 years, he ain't all there. He ain't running anything. And when I see school board members that are Joe Biden's age and they shuffle in and they can barely speak or they're barely coherent, I got to ask myself, why are they still there? Now, I know part of it is they didn't want to have the other choices in there, right? Can't have Brittany. Oh, no, not that. Can't have Jim. Oh, no, not that. But I got to ask you, what have they done for you lately? I mean, we can all run around and say how great we think the school district is. And I don't think anybody's saying the school district's terrible. I don't think anybody's saying the school district's evil, in hurting the children. No, I don't think any of that's being said. I think it's just saying, hey, we have issues or we have potential issues. We ought to address them. Hey, we have a shortfall. We ought to address it. Hey, we have some concerns about these policies that don't align. We need to address that. Hey, we have some issues about a whole lot of staff here that we really can't afford that aren't teachers. We probably ought to address that. Hey, maybe we could reallocate some more funds to the teachers that actually do the job that the school district is supposed to be there to do, which is to educate the children. Maybe we ought to do something for them. Maybe we ought to help them out. I'm just saying. Or maybe we have an old school out there that ought to be shuttered or at least temporarily closed until such time that we have more students once again, and find an alternative use. Save some money. I know this is a strange thing because you and I out here, we have to cut our budgets. We have to adapt how we spend things because, quite frankly, a whole lot of us aren't making a ton more money since the inflationary effects have been for 20% more cost to the vast majority of items across the board. The school district, they have to raise more money because things cost more. But they can also stop wasting money. Just a thought. So I know there are a lot of people out there that have reached out to Mr. Green. I know there are a lot of people that call him that are parents, maybe some former students, maybe some employees of the school district that reach out to Mr. Green and tell him things and thank him and do those various things. And I'm going to ask you, I need you to keep doing that. I need you to take the risk and call Mr. Chad Green and say, hey, Chad, we appreciate what you're doing for the school district. Even if you don't necessarily agree with everything that you think he stands for, at least give him a courtesy call. Mr. Green, I saw you were talking about this issue. I don't know if I agree with your solution or your problem here, but tell me more about it. Help me understand. I mean, is it that hard? Is that much of a problem? And look, if you're an employee or a former employee or a former student, I think Mr. Green would like to hear from you too. Hey, there are a lot of good things about McKinney ISD. I don't think anybody says otherwise. Tell them the good things and then say, but I have a question about this. Or Mr. Green, we think you got this thing wrong, but have you considered this or have you looked at that? Because I'm going to tell you, I'm fairly certain the other 6, they don't want to listen to you. Unless you're going to, powder their nose and tell them how great they are, I'm pretty sure they're not really concerned about what you think. And I, for one, would like some better options in the next election cycle. I don't care who they throw at Chad Green. He's my guy. But the other couple of people that are going to be on the ballot, I'd certainly like another option. So if you're out there, if you live in McKinney ISD, if you would like to see some changes or some improvements or just ask questions, I would encourage you, make yourself be known. Come talk to somebody. Involve yourself in some way to let people know you're interested in running. I mean, because I'm fairly certain we're going to see somebody run that I have zero interest in them ever being elected to anything. I mean, it was bad enough the way her husband did, the AG, and I wouldn't trust her anywhere near a board position. Just saying. With that, I've gone over time now. This has been According to Callus. My allergies are catching up with me, and I will see you on the other side. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend.
TexianPride.com is the destination for Texans who want to show off their love for Texas. We don't settle for mediocre. Our shirts are made from 100% high-quality athletic cotton. They're cool, comfortable, and designed to fit and flatter any body type. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit TexianPride.com for your next stylish Texas tee.